Sometimes the smallest gestures create the biggest ripples. What if I told you that a single act of kindness from a tired waitress would completely transform not just her life, but the life of a child she'd never met before? This isn't just another feel-good story. This is about how one moment of genuine compassion caught the attention of someone who had the power to change everything. Stay with me, because what happens next will restore your faith in humanity and show you that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear aprons and work double shifts just to pay the rent. The Sunrise Diner sat like a forgotten relic on the corner of Maple and 3rd. Its neon sign flickering with the stubborn persistence of something that refused to die. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of bacon grease and yesterday's coffee, a familiar perfume that clung to everything like a second skin. The red vinyl booths were cracked with age, their foam stuffing peeking through like battle scars, and the linoleum floor bore the ghostly outlines of 1,000 spilled meals. For Emma Rodriguez, this place was both sanctuary and prison. At 28, her dreams of becoming a teacher had been shelved indefinitely, replaced by the harsh arithmetic of survival. Every morning at 5:30, she would tie her faded blue apron around her waist and transform into someone else. The bright smile she wore was as much a part of her uniform as the coffee-stained notepad in her pocket. Emma's story wasn't unique. Divorced, struggling to raise her 6-year-old daughter Sophia alone, she worked double shifts to keep their tiny apartment and put food on the table. Her ex-husband's child support payments were as reliable as the diner's temperamental coffee machine, which meant Emma had learned to depend on no one but herself. The tips she earned weren't just money. They were grocery bills, school supplies, and the small dreams she still harbored for Sophia's future. The morning rush was Emma's daily marathon. Construction workers gulped coffee like their lives depended on it. Office employees scrolled through phones while mechanically consuming eggs, and the regulars occupied their usual stools like territorial birds. She moved between the tables with practiced efficiency, her feet already aching in shoes that had seen better years. It was during the mid-morning lull, when the diner settled into its quieter rhythm, that the door chimed with an arrival that would change everything. A man entered, moving with the careful deliberation of someone navigating an unfamiliar world. He was perhaps 45, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Emma made in 3 months. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and there was an unmistakable air of authority about him, the kind that came from making decisions that affected thousands of lives. But it wasn't the man who caught Emma's attention. It was the small hand tucked securely in his, belonging to a boy who couldn't have been more than 8 years old. The child moved with the hesitant steps of someone feeling his way through darkness, his free hand trailing along surfaces as they walked. His eyes, though bright and alert, held the telltale signs of blindness, moving without focus as he relied on his other senses to paint the world around him. The man's voice was gentle as he guided his son to a booth near the window. "Here we are, buddy. There's a nice spot right here." The love in his tone was unmistakable, the kind of protective tenderness that only a parent could possess. He helped the boy slide into the booth, his movements careful and practiced. Emma approached their table with her usual professional warmth. But something about this pair stirred something deeper in her chest. Maybe it was the way the father's eyes never left his son, or the quiet dignity with which the boy sat, his hands folded neatly on the table as he listened to the sounds of the diner around him. "Good morning," Emma said, her voice carrying genuine warmth. "Welcome to the Sunrise Diner. I'm Emma, and I'll be taking care of you today." The father looked up with a smile that seemed to carry the weight of exhaustion. "Thank you. This is my son, Marcus." He glanced at the boy with unmistakable pride. "We're just passing through town, and Marcus insisted we stop for pancakes. Apparently they're his favorite breakfast." Marcus's face lit up with a grin that could have powered the diner's flickering neon sign. Dad says this place makes the best pancakes in 3 states, but I think he's just being nice because he knows I love them. Emma felt her professional mask soften into something more genuine. Well, Marcus, I happen to know that our pancakes are pretty special. We make them fresh every morning, and the cook has a secret ingredient that makes them extra fluffy. What's the secret ingredient? Marcus asked, leaning forward with the curiosity that only children possess. Emma glanced around conspiratorially, then leaned down to whisper, "A little bit of magic and a whole lot of love." The boy giggled, a sound so pure it seemed to brighten the entire diner. His father watched the interaction with something approaching wonder, as if he were witnessing a small miracle. There was a story in his eyes, Emma realized. A story of challenges overcome and battles fought in the quiet spaces where the world couldn't see. "I think we'll take a stack of those magical pancakes," the father said, his voice thick with emotion he was trying to hide. "And coffee for me, Black." "And chocolate milk for Marcus?" Emma guessed. "How did you know?" the boy asked, delighted. "Lucky guess," Emma replied with a wink he couldn't see but could hear in her voice. As she walked away to put in their order, Emma found herself thinking about her own daughter. Sophia was healthy, bright, and full of the kind of boundless energy that came from seeing the world as an endless playground. But this boy, Marcus, navigated a world of permanent darkness with a joy that seemed unshakable. There was something profound in that contrast, something that made Emma's chest tighten with an emotion she couldn't quite name. The pancakes arrived golden and perfect, stacked high with butter melting down the sides like sweet rivers. Emma set the plate in front of Marcus, guiding his hand to the fork. "They're right in front of you, sweetheart. The syrup is in the little pitcher to your right." What happened next was something Emma would remember for the rest of her life. As Marcus felt around for the syrup, his small fingers knocked over the glass of chocolate milk. The brown liquid spread across the table like a flood, dripping onto his lap and the floor below. The boy's face crumpled, not from the wetness but from embarrassment. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I didn't mean to. I'm always doing things like this." His father immediately began damage control, grabbing napkins and trying to clean up the mess while reassuring his son. "It's okay, Marcus. Accidents happen to everyone." But Emma could see the shame in the boy's posture, the way his shoulders hunched as if he were trying to disappear. She had seen that same expression on Sophia's face after particularly difficult days at school, when the world felt too big and unforgiving. Without hesitation, Emma knelt beside the booth, putting herself at Marcus's eye level. Her voice was calm and matter-of-fact. "You know what, Marcus? I spill things all the time. Just yesterday, I dropped an entire tray of plates, made such a crash that everyone in the diner jumped." Marcus looked up, his unseeing eyes directed toward her voice. "Really? Really? And the cook, Big Joe, he told me that the best waitresses are the ones who know how to clean up messes quickly. Want to help me become a better waitress?" The transformation was immediate. Marcus straightened up, nodding eagerly. "What can I do?" Emma guided his hands to help her stack the soaked napkins, turning the cleanup into a collaborative effort rather than a source of shame. She described what they were doing in simple terms, making him feel like an essential part of the process rather than the cause of the problem. "There," she said when they finished. "Teamwork makes everything easier, doesn't it?" Marcus beamed, his earlier embarrassment forgotten. "Can I help you with other tables too?" His father watched this interaction with an expression Emma had never seen before. It wasn't gratitude, though that was certainly there. It was something deeper, more profound. It was the look of a man who had just witnessed his child being seen not as a burden or a problem to be managed, but as a capable person worthy of respect and inclusion. "I think," his father said quietly, We might need to extend our stay in town. Emma brought fresh chocolate milk and watched as Marcus carefully wrapped his hands around the new glass, his movements more confident now. The pancakes were devoured with the enthusiasm only a child could muster, syrup getting everywhere despite his careful efforts. With each bite, he offered commentary that kept both adults laughing. "These really are the best pancakes ever," he declared, his face sticky with syrup. "Emma, do you have kids?" "I do," Emma replied, surprised by the question. "A daughter named Sophia." "She's about your age. And does she like pancakes too?" "She loves them. Maybe not as much as you do, though." Marcus giggled. "Nobody loves pancakes as much as I do. Dad says I would eat them for every meal if he let me." "And he'd be right," his father confirmed with a chuckle. "Though his doctor might have something to say about that." As the meal progressed, Emma found herself drawn back to their table again and again. Not because they needed anything, but because there was something magnetic about their dynamic. The father's patience seemed limitless, describing things around the diner for Marcus without being asked, creating a verbal picture of their surroundings. The boy hung on every word, his imagination filling in the details his eyes couldn't provide. "The ceiling has these old tin tiles," the father was saying, "and they're painted white, but you can see where the paint is chipping off in places. And there's a big mirror behind the counter that reflects the whole diner." "What does Emma look like?" Marcus asked suddenly. Emma felt her cheeks warm as the father's eyes met hers. There was something in his gaze she couldn't quite read, an intensity that made her stomach flutter in a way she hadn't felt in years. "Emma has kind eyes," he said finally. "The kind that smile even when her mouth isn't smiling. And she moves like she's dancing, even when she's just walking between tables." The description was so unexpectedly poetic that Emma felt tears prick at her eyes. When was the last time someone had really seen her? Not just the waitress in the apron, but the person underneath. "She sounds pretty," Marcus said matter-of-factly, causing both adults to laugh. "She is," his father agreed, his voice soft. "Very pretty." The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither quite understood. Emma felt exposed, as if this stranger could see through all her carefully constructed walls to the person she tried so hard to hide. The woman who dreamed of more than just surviving from paycheck to paycheck, who still believed in magic despite everything life had thrown at her. "More coffee?" she managed to ask, proud of how steady her voice sounded. "Please," he replied, and when she leaned over to pour, he added quietly, "Thank you for what you did earlier. With the spill, you turned what could have been a terrible moment into something beautiful." Emma's hand trembled slightly as she poured. "Every child deserves to feel capable. Not everyone sees it that way." The weight behind his words told Emma there were stories there, experiences that had shaped both father and son in ways she could only imagine. The world wasn't always kind to children who were different, and she suspected Marcus had faced his share of impatience and thoughtless cruelty. "Well," she said firmly, "they're wrong." The simple declaration seemed to hit the man like a physical blow. He stared at her for a long moment, his expression cycling through surprise, gratitude, and something that looked almost like hope. As their meal wound down, Emma noticed the father kept glancing at his watch, the expensive piece that probably cost more than her car. There was reluctance in his movements, as if he were dreading whatever came next. Marcus, meanwhile, was trying to make his last few bites of pancake last as long as possible. "Do we have to go, Dad?" the boy asked, as if reading his father's thoughts. "We do, buddy. We have that meeting, remember?" Marcus's face fell. "I wish we could stay longer. Emma makes the best pancakes, and she's really nice." "Yes, she is," his father agreed, his eyes never leaving Emma's face. "Very nice." There was something in his tone that made Emma's heart skip, a weight of meaning she didn't quite understand. As she prepared their check, she found herself wishing they could stay longer too. There was something about this pair that had brightened her entire morning, made the familiar drudgery of her job feel less like work and more like purpose. But she was just a waitress, and they were clearly people from a different world. Whatever connection she felt was probably one-sided, a product of her own loneliness and their temporary kindness. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. The father reached for his wallet, and Emma prepared herself for the usual transaction. Tips at the Sunrise Diner were modest at best, and she had learned not to expect much from even the kindest customers. But as he pulled out his credit card, something else came with it. A business card, thick and elegant, fell onto the table between them. Emma glanced at it automatically, then did a double take that nearly made her drop her notepad. The name embossed in gold lettering read David Chen, CEO, Chen Industries. Below it was an address in the financial district, the kind of building Emma had only seen in movies. Her mind reeled. Chen Industries was one of those companies whose name appeared on billboards and news reports, a technology empire that had revolutionized everything from medical devices to educational software. And sitting in her booth, cutting pancakes for his son, was the man who had built it all. David Chen seemed to notice her recognition and smiled ruefully. "I was hoping we could just be a father and son having breakfast for a little while longer." "I'm sorry," Emma stammered, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. "I didn't mean to stare. It's just that you're wondering what someone like me is doing in a place like this," he finished gently. "The truth is, Marcus chose this diner. We were driving past and he said it smelled like happiness. I've learned to trust his instincts about these things. He sees the world differently than the rest of us." Marcus beamed at the praise, syrup still glistening on his chin. "I can tell when places have good energy. This place has really good energy." Emma found herself smiling despite her shock. "Well, Marcus, you have excellent taste." But David's expression had grown more serious, thoughtful in a way that made Emma's stomach flutter with nervous anticipation. He was studying her face as if memorizing it, his dark eyes holding an intensity that made her feel simultaneously seen and exposed. "Emma," he said finally, "can I ask you something? What do you do when you're not here?" The question caught her off guard. "I'm usually here," she said with a laugh that sounded forced even to her own ears. "Double shifts, you know, single mom life. But what would you do if circumstances were different?" Emma hesitated. It had been so long since anyone had asked her about her dreams that she'd almost forgotten she had any. "I wanted to be a teacher," she admitted quietly. "Elementary school. I was 3 semesters away from my degree when—" She glanced at Marcus, not wanting to burden the conversation with her sob story. "When life happened," David finished with understanding. "When life happened," she agreed. David was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming thoughtfully on the table. Marcus had finished his pancakes and was contentedly listening to the ambient sounds of the diner, his head tilted slightly as if cataloging each noise. "Emma," David said suddenly, his voice carrying a weight that made her pay attention. "I have a proposition for you. And before you say anything, I want you to know that what I witnessed here this morning wasn't just kindness. It was something much rarer." Emma's heart began to race. "Mr. Chen, I don't understand." "Marcus has been through 17 different caregivers in the past 2 years," David continued, his voice steady but tinged with pain. "Nannies, tutors, companions, all highly qualified, all with impeccable references, and every single one of them saw his blindness first and him second." Marcus shifted slightly in his seat, his expression growing guarded in the way children do when they know they're being discussed. "But you," David continued, his eyes never leaving Emma's face, "you saw a boy who spilled his milk, not a disabled child who needed to be managed or pitied. You saw someone who could help, who had value to contribute." Do you know how extraordinary that is? Emma felt tears prick at her eyes. Any decent person would have. No, David said firmly. They wouldn't have. Believe me, I've seen enough to know the difference. He paused, glancing at his son with infinite tenderness. Marcus starts at a new school next month, a specialized program that's supposed to be the best in the country. But he'll need someone with him, someone who can help him navigate not just the academic challenges but the social ones. Someone who sees his potential instead of his limitations. The implication hung in the air between them like a bridge Emma was afraid to cross. Mr. Chen, are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a partnership, he corrected. Marcus needs an advocate, someone who believes in him the way you did this morning, and frankly, after watching you two together, I think you need each other. Marcus had been listening intently, his unseeing eyes bright with excitement. Dad, does this mean Emma could come with us? Could she really? If she wants to, David said softly. The position would come with a full salary, healthcare benefits, and I'd cover the cost of completing your teaching degree. Part-time classes, flexible schedule. You'd have your own apartment on the grounds of our home, complete independence. Emma's world tilted on its axis. The offer was so far beyond anything she could have imagined that it felt like a dream, too good to be real. Mr. Chen, I have a daughter. I can't just. Sophia would be welcome too, of course. There's an excellent elementary school near our home, and Marcus would love having a friend his own age around. David's smile was warm and genuine. I did some research while you were getting our coffee. You've been working at this diner for 3 years, never missed a shift, never had a single customer complaint. Your former professors at the university still remember you fondly. One of them said you had a gift for seeing the unique potential in every child. Emma stared at him speechless. He had researched her. In the span of a breakfast, this man had somehow learned more about her professional life than most people knew after years of friendship. I know it's overwhelming, David continued, and I know it probably seems too good to be true. But Marcus has been asking for months when he was going to meet someone who understood him the way his mother did. His voice caught slightly on the last words, and Emma caught a glimpse of the grief that still lived behind his composed exterior. Your mother? Emma asked gently. She died 2 years ago, Marcus said matter-of-factly with the brutal honesty children possess. She was the only person who never treated me different because I can't see. Dad's been looking for someone like her ever since. The simple statement hit Emma like a physical blow. This wasn't just about a job or even about Marcus's needs. This was about a father desperately trying to fill a void that couldn't be filled, searching for someone who could love his son the way his wife had. I'm not trying to replace anyone, Emma said carefully. I couldn't, even if I wanted to. I know, David said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm not looking for a replacement. I'm looking for someone who can see what she saw. Someone who can help Marcus become everything he's capable of being. Emma looked at Marcus, who was practically vibrating with excitement in his seat. The boy had somehow wormed his way into her heart in the span of a single breakfast, and the thought of being part of his journey was both terrifying and exhilarating. What would I actually do? She asked, surprised by her own voice asking the question instead of politely declining. Be his companion at school, help him with homework, advocate for him when teachers don't understand his needs, David explained, but mostly just be there. Be the person who believes in him unconditionally. I already do that, Emma realized, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Marcus clapped his hands together with delight. See, Dad, I told you she was special. I could tell the moment she started talking to me. Emma felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was being offered. It wasn't just a job, it was a complete transformation of her life and Sophia's. The security, the opportunity to finish her degree, the chance to do work that actually mattered instead of just surviving day to day. But it also meant leaving everything familiar behind, trusting her and her daughter's future to people she had known for less than 2 hours. "I need time to think," she said finally. It's a lot." "Of course," David said immediately. "Take all the time you need. But Emma, I want you to know something. In the 38 years I've been alive, I've learned to recognize when something is meant to happen. There are forces at work in this world that we don't always understand. Connections that transcend logic." He gestured around the diner at the cracked vinyl and flickering lights that had somehow brought them together. "Marcus chose this place today. Out of all the restaurants we passed, all the more upscale options, he chose the Sunrise Diner. And you were here, exactly when we needed you to be." Emma felt goosebumps rise on her arms. There was truth in what he said, a sense of rightness that scared her almost as much as it excited her. "Think about it," David continued, pulling out a pen and writing something on the back of his business card. "That's my personal number. Call me when you're ready, whether it's yes or no. But Emma, I want you to know that meeting you today has given me something I thought I'd lost forever." "What's that?" she asked softly. David's smile was radiant as he looked at his son, then back at her. Hope. As the Chen family prepared to leave, Emma felt the weight of possibility pressing down on her chest like a physical thing. David had left his business card on the table, the elegant cardstock seeming to glow under the diner's harsh fluorescent lights. Marcus was reluctant to go, his small hands patting the table as if memorizing its surface. "Will I see you again, Emma?" he asked, his voice carrying the vulnerability that only children possess when they've found someone who truly understands them. Emma's throat tightened. "I hope so, sweetheart." David stood slowly, his hand finding his son's shoulder with practiced ease. "Take care of yourself, Emma. And remember what I said about hope." She watched them leave, David's hand guiding Marcus with infinite patience as they navigated between tables. At the door, Marcus turned back toward her voice one last time, waving with the unself-conscious joy that had captivated her from the moment they'd met. The diner felt different after they left, emptier somehow despite the handful of customers still scattered across the worn booths. Emma moved through her remaining tables like an automaton, her mind spinning with everything that had just happened. The business card felt heavy in her apron pocket, a tangible reminder that the last hour hadn't been some elaborate daydream. When her shift ended at 3, Emma drove home in a daze, David's words echoing in her mind. A partnership, healthcare benefits, a chance to finish her degree. It was everything she'd stopped allowing herself to want, wrapped up in an offer that seemed too extraordinary to be real. Her apartment building looked even shabbier than usual as she climbed the narrow stairs to the second floor. The hallway smelled of cooking odors and disappointment, a stark contrast to the quiet elegance she'd sensed surrounding David and Marcus. She fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking slightly from a combination of exhaustion and adrenaline. "Mama!" Sophia's voice rang out the moment Emma opened the door. Her daughter launched herself from the couch where she'd been watching cartoons with Mrs. Patterson, their elderly neighbor who watched Sophia during Emma's shifts. Emma caught her daughter in a fierce hug, breathing in the familiar scent of strawberry shampoo and childhood. At 6, Sophia was all legs and wild curls, her dark eyes bright with the kind of intelligence that made Emma's chest swell with pride and terror in equal measure. This little girl was everything good in Emma's world, the reason she got up every morning and faced another day of aching feet and forced smiles. "How was school, baby?" Emma asked, settling onto the couch with Sophia curled against her side. "We learned about butterflies today. Did you know they taste with their feet?" Sophia launched into an animated description of metamorphosis, her hands dancing as she spoke. Emma listened with half her attention, the other half still processing the morning's events. Mrs. Patterson gathered her knitting and headed for the door, pausing to squeeze Emma's shoulder. "She's been good as gold, dear. Though she did ask about 12 times when you'd be home." "Thank you, Mrs. P. I don't know what we'd do without you." The older woman's smile was warm but tinged with concern. "You work too hard, Emma. That child needs her mother, not just a provider." After Mrs. Patterson left, Emma found herself really looking at their small apartment with fresh eyes. The furniture was secondhand but clean, the walls decorated with Sophia's artwork and a few family photos. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. The thought of leaving it all behind for something unknown felt both thrilling and terrifying. "Mama, you're being weird," Sophia announced, studying Emma's face with the uncomfortable perceptiveness children possess. "Did something happen at work?" Emma considered her words carefully. Sophia was mature for her age, forced to grow up quickly by circumstances neither of them had chosen. But how do you explain to a 6-year-old that a stranger might be offering them a completely different life? "I met a little boy today," Emma said finally. "He was very special, and his daddy might have a job for Mama, a different kind of job." Sophia's eyes widened. "Would we have to move?" "Maybe. Would that scare you?" Sophia was quiet for a moment, her small face serious as she considered the question. "Would you be happier? You're always tired now, and sometimes you cry when you think I'm sleeping." Emma's heart clenched. She thought she'd hidden her struggles better than that. "Oh, baby, I'm okay. I just worry sometimes." "About money," Sophia said matter-of-factly. "I know we don't have much. Jessica's mom told her we're poor, and Jessica told everyone at school." The casual cruelty of it hit Emma like a slap. She'd known other parents whispered, but hearing it from Sophia's own lips made it real in a way that left her breathless with anger and shame. "Sophia, we may not have a lot of money, but we have something more important. We have each other, and we have love." "I know, Mama. But wouldn't it be nice to have money too?" The innocent question hung in the air like a challenge. Emma pulled her daughter closer, feeling the weight of every sacrifice, every missed opportunity, every dream deferred for the sake of survival. David Chen was offering them a way out, a chance at the kind of life she'd stopped believing was possible. That evening, after Sophia was asleep, Emma sat at their tiny kitchen table with David's business card in her hands. She'd looked up Chen Industries on her phone, scrolling through article after article about David's innovations in assistive technology, his philanthropic work, his reputation as a devoted father. Everything she read painted him as exactly who he'd seemed to be, a man using his success to make the world better for people like his son. But it was the obituary for his wife that stopped her cold. Catherine Chen had been a teacher, just like Emma had dreamed of being. The photo showed a woman with kind eyes and a radiant smile, her arm around a younger Marcus who still had light in his unseeing gaze. The article mentioned her work with disabled children, her belief that every child possessed unique gifts waiting to be discovered. Emma stared at the photo for a long time, understanding finally why David had seen something in her interaction with Marcus. He wasn't just looking for a caregiver or even an advocate. He was looking for someone who shared his late wife's vision, someone who could help his son navigate a world that often saw disability before humanity. The phone call to her sister Maria was harder than Emma had expected. Maria lived 3 states away with her own family, but she'd been Emma's anchor through the divorce, the single motherhood, all the struggles of the past few years. "You're kidding me," Maria said after Emma had finished explaining the morning's events. "A billionaire offered you a job because you were nice to his kid." "It's not that simple, Maria. This little boy, Marcus, there's something special about him, And his father, he's not what you'd expect from someone that wealthy. He's grieving, and he's trying to do right by his son. Emma, honey, I love that you see the best in people, but this sounds like something out of a fairy tale. Rich men don't usually rescue waitresses, especially not based on one conversation. Emma bristled at her sister's skepticism, though she understood it. He researched me, Maria. He knew about my college work, my professors. This isn't some impulsive gesture. That's what worries me. Who does that? Who investigates someone after one meeting? Maria's voice carried the protective edge that had gotten her through law school and a difficult divorce of her own. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you'll think this through before you uproot Sophia's entire life for a man you just met. After they hung up, Emma felt the weight of doubt settling over her like a heavy blanket. Maria was right to be cautious. Emma had always been the dreamer, the one who believed in happy endings and second chances. But dreams didn't pay rent, and second chances sometimes turned into devastating mistakes. She pulled out her laptop and began researching everything she could find about David Chen, Marcus, and their family. What she discovered only deepened the mystery. David had been married to Catherine for 8 years before her death from cancer. Marcus had been born with a rare genetic condition that caused his blindness, but every photo showed him as a happy, engaged child. There were no scandals, no red flags, just the story of a family that had faced tragedy with grace and was trying to rebuild. The school David had mentioned was real, too. A prestigious institution known for its innovative approaches to special needs education. Emma found herself reading testimonials from parents, watching videos of children thriving in environments designed around their unique abilities rather than their limitations. It was exactly the kind of place she would have chosen for Marcus if she'd had unlimited resources. But it was a comment thread on an old news article that gave her pause. Someone had written about seeing David Chen at various restaurants and diners around the city, always with Marcus, always patient and attentive. Another person mentioned seeing them at a children's museum. David describing every exhibit in vivid detail for his son's benefit. The picture that emerged was of a father completely devoted to his child's happiness and development. Someone who understood that the world needed to be translated, not just navigated. Emma closed the laptop and walked to Sophia's room, standing in the doorway watching her daughter sleep. Sophia's dark hair was spread across her pillow like silk, her face peaceful in the way that only children's faces could be. This little girl deserved every opportunity, every chance at a better life. But she also deserved stability, security, and a mother who made decisions based on wisdom rather than wishful thinking. The next morning brought a different kind of clarity. Emma had barely slept, her mind churning through possibilities and fears in equal measure. As she prepared for another shift at the diner, Sophia watched her with the uncomfortable perception that had become her trademark. "Are you going to call the man about the job?" Sophia asked, spreading peanut butter on her toast with the concentration of a surgeon. "I don't know yet, baby. It's complicated. Do you like the little boy?" Emma paused in braiding Sophia's hair. "Yes, I do. Very much." "Then why is it complicated?" The question was so simple, so direct, that it cut through all of Emma's elaborate justifications and fears. Why was it complicated? Because she was afraid. Afraid of hope, afraid of change, afraid of trusting that something good could actually happen to her. "You know what, Sophia? You're absolutely right. Maybe it doesn't have to be complicated." At the diner, Emma moved through her morning routine with a new sense of purpose. Every interaction with customers, every small kindness she witnessed or provided, seemed to reinforce the lesson Marcus had taught her without even trying. The world needed more people who saw potential instead of problems, who offered help instead of pity. During her break, Emma stepped outside into the crisp morning air and pulled out her phone. David's number was programmed in, waiting for her courage to catch up with her heart. She dialed before she could change her mind. Emma. David's voice was warm with surprise and something that sounded like relief. I was hoping you'd call. Mr. Chen, I've been thinking about your offer and I have some questions. Of course, ask me anything. This position with Marcus, it's not just about helping him at school, is it? You're looking for someone who can be a constant in his life, someone who can help him build confidence and independence. Exactly. Marcus is incredibly bright, but he's also at a crucial age for developing social skills and self-advocacy. He needs someone who believes in his abilities unconditionally. Emma took a deep breath. I want you to know that I've done my research. I've read about your wife, about the work she did with special needs children. I understand what you're really asking of me. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When David spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. Catherine would have loved you. The way you handled that moment with the spilled milk, the way you made Marcus feel capable instead of clumsy, that was pure Catherine. I'm not trying to replace her, Mr. Chen. I couldn't even if I wanted to. I know, and that's exactly why you're perfect for this job. You're not trying to be anyone other than yourself. And yourself is exactly what Marcus needs. Emma felt something settle in her chest, a sense of rightness that transcended logic. When would you need an answer? Take all the time you need. But Emma, I want you to know that I've been searching for someone like you for 2 years. People with your combination of intuition, kindness, and strength don't come along often. After she hung up, Emma stood outside the diner watching the morning traffic flow past like a river of possibilities. The old Emma, the one who had learned to expect disappointment, whispered warnings about trusting too much, hoping too hard. But there was another voice too, one that sounded suspiciously like Marcus's laugh, bright and unafraid. She thought about Sophia's question. Why did it have to be complicated? Maybe sometimes the best decisions were the simplest ones made with the heart instead of the head. Maybe sometimes when the universe presented you with an opportunity to change not just your own life but someone else's, the only real choice was to say yes. That afternoon, Emma made 2 phone calls that would change everything. The first was to the elementary school where Sophia was enrolled, asking about their transfer policies and what records would be needed. The second was to David Chen. I have one condition, Emma said when David answered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I need to meet with Marcus's current teachers, understand exactly what challenges he's facing. If I'm going to advocate for him, I need to know what I'm walking into. Done, David replied immediately. When can you start? The transition happened faster than Emma had ever imagined possible. Within a week, she had given notice at the diner, much to the shock of her co-workers who had watched her struggle for years. The owner, a gruff man named Pete who rarely showed emotion, actually teared up when she explained she was leaving to help a special needs child. You were always too good for this place, Emma, he said, pressing an envelope into her hands. Take care of yourself and that little girl of yours. Inside the envelope was a bonus check, more money than Pete had ever given anyone. It was enough to cover their moving expenses and then some. The Chen estate was nothing like Emma had prepared herself for. The sprawling property sat behind ornate iron gates with manicured gardens that looked like something from a magazine. But it was the warmth that greeted them at the front door that made all the difference. David had been waiting and Marcus was practically bouncing with excitement. Emma! You came! You really came! Marcus launched himself toward her voice and Emma caught him in a hug that felt like coming home. Sophia hung back shyly, overwhelmed by the grandeur around them. But Marcus, with the social intuition that often accompanies blindness, immediately turned his attention to her. You must be Sophia, he said, extending his hand with formal politeness. I'm Marcus. Your mom is going to help me at school, but I was hoping we could be friends too. Do you really live in a castle? Sophia whispered, causing all three adults to laugh. It's just a big house, Marcus assured her. But it has a pool and a library with books that talk and a kitchen where the cook makes cookies whenever you ask nicely. Within an hour, the two children were racing through the halls, Sophia describing everything she saw while Marcus navigated with the confidence of someone who knew every inch of his domain. Emma watched them with wonder, marveling at how naturally they connected. They're going to be trouble together, David observed, but his tone was filled with delight rather than concern. Emma's apartment in the guest wing was larger than the entire place she'd shared with Sophia. It had its own kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a living area that opened onto a private garden. But more than the luxury, it was the sense of safety that overwhelmed her. For the first time in years, she could breathe without calculating the cost. The real test came the following Monday, Marcus's first day at his new school. Emma had spent the weekend reviewing his educational files, meeting with his therapists, and learning about the specific accommodations he would need. She'd also had several long conversations with his previous teachers, painting a picture of a brilliant child whose potential was often overshadowed by adults who focused on his limitations. Whitmore Academy was everything David had promised and more. The campus was designed with accessibility in mind, featuring tactile pathways, audio signals, and technology that seamlessly integrated with Marcus's needs. But it was the teaching philosophy that impressed Emma most. Every educator she met spoke about their students' abilities first, their challenges second. Marcus's homeroom teacher, Mrs. Rivera, was a petite woman with silver hair and the kind of energy that suggested she could move mountains when necessary. She welcomed Marcus with genuine enthusiasm, immediately engaging him in conversation about his interests and goals. "I understand you're quite the mathematician," she said, leading them to his desk. "We have some challenging problems lined up that I think will keep you busy." Emma watched Marcus settle into his new environment with a mixture of pride and protectiveness. Other students filtered in, some offering friendly greetings, others simply curious about the new boy with the white cane. It was during these interactions that Emma truly understood her role. She wasn't there to hover or intervene unnecessarily. She was there to facilitate, to translate when needed, and to ensure that Marcus was seen as a peer rather than a project. The first challenge came during recess. A group of boys Marcus's age were playing a game that involved running and catching, clearly something that would be difficult for him to join. Emma watched from a distance as Marcus stood at the edge of the playground, listening to their laughter with the wistful expression of someone who wanted to belong, but didn't know how to bridge the gap. One of the boys, a freckled redhead named Tommy, noticed Marcus standing alone. Instead of ignoring him or offering condescending help, Tommy walked over with genuine curiosity. "Hey, you're the new kid, right? I'm Tommy. What kind of games do you like to play?" 6 months later, Emma stood in the same spot where she'd first watched Marcus navigate the playground, but everything had changed. The boy who had once stood uncertainly at the edges was now at the center of a group of friends, leading them in a game he'd invented that relied on sound and strategy rather than sight. His laughter rang across the courtyard, pure and unself-conscious. Sophia had blossomed too, her confidence growing alongside her friendship with Marcus. She'd become his unofficial describer of the visual world, but more importantly, he'd become her guide to seeing beyond the surface of things. Together they'd taught Emma that the most profound changes often happen when we stop trying to fix what we think is broken and start celebrating what's already whole. David had kept every promise. Emma's teaching degree was nearly complete, her future bright with possibilities she'd never dared imagine. But the real transformation hadn't been in their circumstances. It had been in their understanding of what family could look like when built on genuine care rather than obligation. As Emma watched the children play, she thought about that morning in the diner when everything had seemed hopeless. Sometimes the most important moments in our lives arrive disguised as ordinary encounters. A spilled glass of milk, a patient father's love, a waitress who saw potential instead of problems. The smallest gestures really do create the biggest ripples. And sometimes when we're brave enough to say yes to hope, we discover that the life we thought we wanted was nothing compared to the life we never knew we needed.